What's up guys, it's time for your second video of the day. Now this one is more of a serious one today, so I'm going to talk about something that I've never really spoken about before on my channel, obviously, talking about um, people that have had to people that have to go deal with, horrible diseases, horrible illnesses, mainly dementia, alzheimer's, cancer, that kind of thing. Obviously, I'm a big fan of birds of a feather, and I was very, very sad to hear that Pauline White, who plays Sharon Theodopoulos in the show, was diagnosed with dementia about 4 years ago. And obviously she's had to retire from acting. I know Linda Robson was saying the other week that she doesn't really remember anyone now, she doesn't recognise anyone. To be honest with you, like dementia and, things like dementia and cancer are not things that I would wish on anyone, not even on my own worst enemies. I wish them. I wouldn't even wish that on them. You know, Cancer and dementia are the sort of things that no one should ever have to deal with. You know, and my heart really does go out to, anyone whose lives have been affected by, cancer and by, dementia and things like that. You know, I, to be honest, I've often thought about how I would, hope if one of my family members was diagnosed with cancer or diagnosed with dementia. And to be honest with you, I just don't think I'd be able to hope for something like that. I think it would be a really difficult thing to deal with and a really difficult thing to cope with. Like, it's not an easy thing to have to deal with and to have to go through every day, like to have to go through, seeing your loved ones, suffering like that. It must be horrible. Like, I can't begin to imagine what it must be like for people whose family members are, dealing with that. You know, I I'd love to say that, one of my family members will never get cancer, or will never be will never never be diagnosed with dementia. But the thing is, you can never really say that's never gonna happen. I think that's the thing with, like, the one lesson I've learned in life is that you can never really say that something is never gonna happen, because you just don't know. It's like, I can say, it's like I can't say, oh, one of my family members is never gonna get cancer, or is never gonna be diagnosed with dementia or something like that, because I just don't know that. I'd love to say that's never going to happen, but unfortunately, it's impossible for me to say that that's never going to happen, because you just don't know. Um, Obviously, it's not something that I would want to happen, but I just, obviously, I think it would be, it's impossible to say it won't happen. Obviously, to finish with things like cancer, dementia, they don't discriminate. The thing is with things like cancer, like, you don't even have to be an unhealthy person to be diagnosed with cancer. You could be an extremely fit and healthy person and still be diagnosed with that. It doesn't discriminate against people. Even, you don't have to be extremely unhealthy to be diagnosed with something, to be diagnosed with cancer. You could be an extremely fit and healthy person and still be diagnosed with it. That's one of those things. Obviously, I don't personally know anyone that's, been diagnosed with dementia or been diagnosed with cancer or anything like that. And my granddad had leukemia. My great granddad, he did have cancer, but I was really young at the time, so I don't remember, too much about it. But it was kind of, obviously, that's real nowadays. As obviously, I'm older now, but I don't think I'd be able to cope with it. To someone being diagnosed with, someone I know, like one of my family members being diagnosed with cancer or being diagnosed with dementia. I would find that, incredibly hard, especially when they were diagnosed with dementia and it got to the point where they didn't even recognise me or know who I was. That would really, really hit hard for me, and I think it probably hits hard for a lot of for a lot of people. Their family members, obviously, they don't remember them or they don't recognise them, and it must be hard for those, for them themselves. They don't. Obviously, 1 minute they're able to recognise everyone, they know who everyone is, and then the next minute it's like their brain's gone blank. They don't recognise that person. They don't know who that person is, and it must be it must be incredibly painful and incredibly hard to go through that. Um, I mean, I remember there was a young girl. Obviously, I was following her story about 4 years ago, almost. Her name was Sophie, Sophie Farrell, and I've actually mentioned her story on my channel before. So she was diagnosed with cancer in September 2020, not long after she turned 9. She turned 9 in the August of that year, and she was diagnosed with cancer, with a rare form of childhood cancer, rhabdomyosarcoma, about a month later in September of that year. And obviously, her family found it really hard because obviously this was during COVID time and during the time of lockdowns and heavy restrictions. So, having a sick child, in those times was obviously always going to be extremely hard. I mean, as I think they said, from what I remember, she said her mum was saying that Sophie had become unwell in the summer of that year. She started having stomach pains and a loss of appetite and things like that, and then she started bleeding. And they took her to the doctors. Like so that happened after the doctor like Sophie had gone away with her grandparents, and when she came back, she said that she'd been bleeding. And her mum took her to the doctors, and the doctors kept saying that it was, that she'd started her period and things like that. And her mum was saying to them, but she's 9 years old. How could she have started her period? She's only 9 years old. She knew that, her mum knew that there was something more going on there. I think that was the thing. Like, they were saying it was, a period or it was something else. But her mum knew that there was something more going on there. Um, and it was like things kept getting worse, and in the end, her mum took her to the hospital, and they like whilst they was examining her, they found a lump in her stomach, and when they did a scan, they found a 12 centimeter tumor growing in her stomach. But they managed to remove, I think, 95% of it, but they couldn't remove like the whole thing because obviously because there was that risk that it had damaged one of her vital organs, like her vital organs. So they couldn't remove the whole thing, but they managed to remove about 95% of it. And then obviously she underwent chemotherapy and radiotherapy, and she got the all clear in April of 2021. And obviously things were starting to look up for the family. Things were starting to get better for them, and then all of a sudden, just 8 weeks later, in the June of that year, they found that they were told they obviously came back from holiday, and they were told by the doctors that the cancer had come back, and then there was another tumour growing where the other one had been. But the cancer had come back more aggressive, and there wasn't really anything they could do. They gave Sophie 6 months to live, which would have taken her up until December of 2021. But she died in the September of that year. Um, and obviously, I found out about her story because they appeared on an episode of This Morning towards the end of July, and it was around that time that they had made the decision to stop all further treatment for Sophie because it had obviously become clear that the treatment that that the treatments just weren't working for her. They were basically just prolonging the inevitable. Really, they weren't going to cure her. They were just prolonging the inevitable, and they knew that I think what it was. I think they wanted to focus on making the most of the time that they had left with Sophie. Obviously, they didn't have that much, so they had very little time left with her, and they wanted to make the most of that time. Um, and she did a bucket list of things that she wanted to do, and one of those things was to go on This Morning. I think she was a big fan of Holly Willoughby as well. but Holly Willoughby wasn't there at the time. She was away on holiday, but she sent some things to like she sent there were some gifts that she for Sophie. One of them was the tiara that Holly had actually worn during the pantomimes. She'd actually asked if she could actually have the tiara for her daughter, but they said no. But when she told them about Sophie, they made that kind of special exception for her. Which I thought was really sweet. She met Gordon Ramsay and did some cooking with him. She did a lot of things. In that time. I remember before she got too unwell, she had a birthday present. Like she got a birthday present one out. She got a birthday present and a card for her sister Lucy, and she hid it under her bed. And obviously, her sister Lucy was it was her birthday on the 21st of that month. Um, I remember her mum put a post out on Facebook saying that Sophie's older sister Lucy was threatened. She was really scared that Sophie was going to pass away on her birthday, and like her mum was saying that she couldn't tell Lucy that that wasn't going to happen because they didn't know. That there was no way of knowing, if that was going to happen or not. Obviously, they knew that it would probably be around that time, but it was sort of impossible for them to say to her, well, it's not going to happen on your birthday because they just didn't know that. It obviously it was impossible to know. Um, I remember it was at the start of September that they said that I mean it was her bowels had started shutting down and that toxins were being released into her body and they were attacking her other organs and causing them to start shutting down. And her mum, it was around that time that her mum said, that she wanted Sophie to die, like to be at home and to pass away surrounded by her loved ones, which she did. Obviously, she was at home with her loved ones. Her mum was huddling with her on the bed when she passed away. She passed away on the 18th of September 2021, 3 days before her older sister Lucy's birthday. Um, well, it was funny. It's on the Friday. On the Wednesday, I think it was on the Wednesday. So Charlotte, who obviously her mum had said that Sophie had been like asleep for most of the time, and she couldn't even lift her head up off the pillow, but she still had that sense of humour, you know. And then obviously she was saying on the Friday that they'd sung happy birthday to Lucy, and obviously Sophie had given Lucy the birthday present and hard and that, and she was saying that she believes that was what Sophie was waiting for. Sophie was waiting to be able to give her that birthday present and hard. Like that was the one thing that she wanted to do before she went. And obviously, it was the next morning, obviously on the Saturday morning, that she passed away. But the thing I always admired about Sophie, for a 10-year-old, she was very, very positive. She had a really positive outlook on it. Like she wasn't scared. Like she was so strong and she was so brave, even in the hard, like, the difficult times. She was so brave and, I know that she was really close with her younger sister, and I know that a lot of people said that wherever Sophie was, her younger sister wasn't far behind. Um, I mean, obviously, my heart broke for the family because I think everybody was kind of praying for a miracle and praying that Sophie would somehow get better, but unfortunately that didn't happen. But you know, I've followed her story for a while, and I've been like really, really impressed with some of the changes that her mum has made, and obviously some of the things that she's gotten changed. Like she's just done a fantastic job, and Sophie would be so proud of her if she was here now. Um, Obviously, for me, as I said, I really, really do feel for anyone that is having to deal with, someone who's been diagnosed with cancer or someone that's, been diagnosed with dementia and things like that. They're the cruelest illnesses in the world, and I would never wish them on anyone. I mean, you'd have to be a right sick bastard, a right sick individual to wish that on anyone, even on your own worst. You would never wish that on anyone. Even on your own worst enemies, you wouldn't want them to have to go through something like that, because that's an awful thing to go through, having to deal with cancer or having to deal with, dementia. And the thing with cancer is it's sad because it's not just adults that get cancer; children get it as well. Some children have it, but some don't. And I feel for any parent, who's had to go through that pain of losing a child to cancer, because that's not something that any parent should ever have to go through. No parent should have to go through that pain of losing a child to cancer. It's the worst thing that any parent will ever go through, and any parent would say that, that is the worst thing that they've ever been through. Um, it's like no parent should have to bury a child under those circumstances. Um, and then I feel for anyone that's had to deal with that, that's had to go through that pain. It's like, it's like, as a parent, it's like, how do you even come to terms with that? Like, I can't imagine what it must be like for a parent when your child has cancer and you're told that your child is going to die. It's like, how do you even come to terms with that? Like, how do you even accept that? How do you even get your heads around that? Because that's something. If I was a parent and my child had cancer and I was told that they were gonna die, basically, I wouldn't. To be honest, I would never be able to get my head around that. I think it's not something I'd ever be able to deal with. Like, how do you even like how do you even process something like that? The fact that you're going to lose a child. That's not something that any parent should have to fear or should have to think about. But sadly, that is the way life is. Life is very cruel sometimes, and these things happen whether we want them to or not. You know, and this is the thing. Like, these things happen to good people who don't deserve to have this happening to them. It's like, why did good people? Because it feels like good people always have bad things happening to them, always have bad things happen to them. But the bad people never ever get anything bad happen to them, do they? Realistically, you know. As I said, although I was very, very sad when I heard that Pauline Clark had been diagnosed with dementia. She was brilliant at Sharon in Birds of a Feather, and I think it's sad. It is sad knowing that Birds of a Feather obviously will never come back, but obviously it would never be right to do Birds of a Feather without Sharon. Even the lockdown special they did in 2000, I think it was 2020, even that episode didn't feel right, as obviously Sharon wasn't in it. Obviously Tracy and it was only Tracy and Dorian that were in it, and it didn't feel right watching that episode. It felt like it didn't feel right without Sharon. You know, but yeah, obviously, as I said, my heart and my thoughts go out to anyone who's been affected by dementia, who's been affected by cancer. Because there's no lie when you think when in saying that cancer, dementia, things like that, destroy people's lives and turn people's lives upside down as they do. They do destroy people's lives and they do, turn people's lives upside down. And it's the most painful thing to ever to ever see someone going through, to see our loved one going through that. To see our loved ones not being able to remember who you are, and not being able to recognize you when they were able to do that before. You know, Obviously, as I said, I don't know what it's like to go through that, but I really, really feel for for people that have had to go through that or are going through that. It does upset me when I hear these stories of people who have lost a loved one to dementia, or have a loved one that is suffering from dementia. And it's the same with cancer when I hear stories from people that have lost a loved one to cancer, or know someone who's suffering with that. It breaks my heart because no one deserves that. It breaks my heart knowing that people are going through that, and will continue to go through that all the time. You know, and yeah, it's like it's such a terrible, terrible, awful thing for anyone to deal with, and my heart really, really does go out to, to anyone that's obviously had to be, obviously that knows someone that's, going through that, whether it be cancer, dementia, Alzheimer's, MS, again, MS, very horrible illness, um, obviously you've also got MND, MND, again, another cruel illness, which again is another illness that doesn't discriminate, you know. But yeah, I just thought I would do that little video today. I thought it'd be a nice little video to do. You know, my all I can say if for all of you guys that are going through this or know someone that's going through this, stay strong. You've got this. Don't let yourself down. Just stay strong. And hold it and hold on and keep holding on. You know, don't let dementia win. Don't let cancer win. Because cancer will never win. Dementia will never win. These all illnesses will never ever win. Because we will never let them win. That's what I'm gonna say. So have an awesome day. I might do another video later on. I may not, but I'll see if I feel up to it. I'll do another one. But for now, have an awesome day, and I'll catch you again soon. Bye bye.